right. Well, okay. Welcome, everyone, to Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels. Shit, that was terrible.
Why did you say that like that?
I don't know. I think it's hearing myself. It's screwing me up.
You gotta forget it. Just forget it.
And you do the intro. I want to hear what you got.
Oh, okay.
All right. And 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels. I am Aaron.
I'm Justin.
Today we are talking about Aliens with an S, which is the sequel to the 1979 movie Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. So Aliens is directed by James Cameron, came out in 1986.
Yes, that is correct. You know your dates. Good job.
I wanted to get it right off the top.
Yep. So,
hey, and a happy Father's Day to everybody too. It's Father's Day when we're recording this. So, in honor of Father's Day, we decided to cover a movie about mothers.
Well, I mean, we have the thing between Sigourney and Newt. And then we have the thing between Mama Alien and her babies, and her being real mad. And I mean, it's really just two moms duking it out, and it was great.
I think the whole movie is about moms, or it comes down to moms, you could say. Anyway, but I think you should do a recap of the first movie so people know what the hell we're talking about.
It's true. The movie Aliens is based on the 1979. See, I know my dates too. Classic Alien, and I have a hard time not thinking about these movies without Star Wars. Alien came out in 79 off of the success of Star Wars, and Ridley Scott takes this story, and over we see what he thinks Star Wars would be if it was more realistic.
Yeah.
And so we have just a group of, you could call them civilian Imperial agents, working on a what was that word?
I mean, I call them space truckers.
But they are space truckers. But if we're thinking about it through the Star Wars lens,
I see.
These guys just work for the Empire.
Yeah, they're just like
doing
the people
their thing.
that built the Death Star.
Yeah.
Right.
These are literally the people that
nameless
built the Death Star.
nobodies who are going to die.
Yeah, and they're on a big mining vessel.
Yeah, now what do they mine? It's like it's ore of some kind, right? And I imagine it's mined from some planet or from an asteroid. Did they ever say exactly where they mine it from?
They didn't, but the ship was built to mine and then process the ore.
Yeah.
And it kind of did that as they were crossing back and forth through space. They'd pick up some, have it ready when they get back to Earth. And that makes me think of Rogue One, how they were going down and mining the kyber crystals out of that planet just for their evil use. And so Alien, they're coming home from stealing this planet's resources because they're evil. And they get woken up by a beacon, and they have to go down to a planet to investigate. And what they find is they find a big old alien ship with a big old dead alien inside. And then William Hurt.
Hurt.
All right, John Hurt, fine. John Hurt gets impregnated by an alien parasite.
Now, this is something when we talk about it, I don't know if we ever solve the mystery, but they're just space truckers, right? I mean, and they get this signal. So is it company policy? Is that the way that Dallas, the Tom Skerritt character, is that way he explains it? It's company policy. They have to go check out any SOS signal they get or any signal from any planet.
Well, like, the ship is driven by a big AI called Mother.
Yes.
And Mother knows all of the rules of this evil corporation, the Empire. And so it wakes them up because it knows that it must check it out.
Yeah. But does it know why it must check it out? Does it already know that the xenomorphs are there?
No, but later. So, yeah, William Hurt, John Hurt, whoever it is, gets brought back onto the...
Yeah, John Hurt, he plays Kane. That's his name.
Yes. Oh, it's Kane, the first officer, basically, to Tom Skerritt, the captain.
Yep.
So they go down to the ship. They find a bunch of eggs. John Hurt is impregnated. He's brought back aboard the ship. and basically he has a baby alien inside of him.
Yeah, but they don't know it
And
until that amazing chestbuster scene.
yes, it has a very famous scene in the movie where John William Hurt, his chest explodes
Just call him
and
Kane.
an alien pops out of it. Yes. But we don't need to call him Kane anymore
We
because
don't
he
anymore.
did, baby. He did. And then the rest of the movie is Tom Skerritt trying to figure out how to survive
Yeah.
until he's killed.
Everybody else gets killed too.
Yep.
Um, yeah, the chestbuster scene though, I do want to mention, and because you love when I mention how it looks like it's an amazing scene, and then when you actually see the alien, it looks like a bloody banana on a stick that somebody shoved up through a fake chest cavity, and I think it
And
looks horrible.
I was
it's a
thinking
great
about you saying that.
I know. I think it's a great scene, but I just think that the alien needed a little bit of articulation instead to not make it look ridiculous. I think everyone
So,
in movie history is overlooking how bad that creature effect looks, although the scene's amazing. But anyway, I digress.
when we get the chestbuster scene in Aliens, it really felt the same. Did you feel like John Cameron was able to do a better job?
I think he was. The chest but that we see is when they find one of the civilian, I don't know, whatever they are on that planet, and she's like in a cocoon, right? And she's like up on the wall, and that's when you see the chest. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yep, that's
Yeah,
exactly right.
it looks better because they made the little alien. They give it more of a, it has more of a personality. I thought it definitely it moved more. You know what I mean? It just gave it a little something extra, and it worked. It worked far better. That's what they should have done in Alien. I always think.
So, long story short, Sigourney Weaver
Yeah,
as
Ripley.
Ripley, she's the only one to survive this terrible thing, and she blows the alien out of a space lock, or what do you call
Airlock.
that? Airlock?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have to mention Ian Holm, the late great Ian Holm.
Yes, and he just died.
Yes, as the ship's science officer, and he turns out to be an android, which is not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with androids. We have a lot of android listeners. They're great, great people.
Ash is his character name. Yeah, Ash.
Ash. Ash has gotten a directive from Mother that they must bring the alien back at all costs,
Right.
which
It's
Ripley
kind of
finds out.
It's the first. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say the first because it's just it. Because who knew making the film was going to be a franchise? But at that time, it was clear he was working on a directive of a heartless company, right?
Yep.
That's why the crew was expendable, and they found this new life form, and it was bring that back at all costs.
But here's the important part again. This is all Mother not talking to the evil corporation. She's just programmed by it.
See, that's what you
And,
think, but I don't know. I just feel
well,
like she speaks to them.
Aliens kind of covers that by the fact that once Ripley gets back, they have absolutely no idea what happened. And so
Well, that's
we'll
a good
get into
point.
that when we get into Aliens, but
But
yeah.
Paul Reiser seems to know what happened.
Does he until he meets Ripley? I don't think so.
Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah, God bless Paul Reiser. Um, do you watch Stranger Things?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, I really liked him in Stranger Things.
I know, and it took Stranger Things to wipe the kind of lame memory of Mad About You out of my brain, right?
I mean,
Because he was always cool in Aliens, and he did a couple other films, I think.
he did a
that
bunch in the '80s. He was hot,
Right,
hot Paul
and
Reiser.
then the Mad About You thing, it just turned him into a, sitcom funny guy. So he lost any. I don't know. He didn't stick in my brain as a Sean Astin. Like, yeah, he's doing other stuff now, but he was really cool in the '80s. So I kind of just forgot about Paul Reiser until he was on
Sean
Stranger Things
Astin,
again.
too.
And I was just like, Paul Reiser was in Aliens, man. He gets a pass for that.
Yeah, he absolutely gets a pass. So, Alien. What other details do we want to cover about this movie that are relevant to
Well,
the
Ripley's the
sequels?
only survivor. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. And she goes into hypersleep again at the end of the film thinking, man, I took care of that problem. I'm all by myself, but hopefully I can get home because she's in an evacuation shuttle, so she wasn't on the main Orion Nostromo, right? It blew up,
Right.
so she's
Um,
on the escape pod, and she thinks she's heading toward home. Or
yeah, she talked about the frontier being about 2 weeks away, whatever that was. I don't know if that was the right word,
yeah,
but they expected a short hypersleep. And as we find out, ho ho, those machines have some life on them.
yeah.
I want a sleep pod that dependable. That's amazing.
It's like an old Twilight Zone episode, you know. That's how
Oh,
it
it
felt to
absolutely
me.
is. So the success of Alien, which is huge, um, leads to a sequel, and it takes time. Like they were immediately the producers, the guys that really. Do you remember their names? The
Mm.
Brandywine Productions team
Yes. Who are
of
they?
Carol, Geiler, and Hill. Just classic producers that have been doing stuff forever. And I'm pretty sure they're still like, we can do Star Wars better than Star Wars.
Yeah.
Immediately want a sequel. There's a bit of a fight.
Now, why didn't Ridley Scott return for a sequel?
I don't know.
I didn't see
He
that
was.
covered anywhere.
I didn't see it covered either, but they may not have even asked. But it's probably in some book somewhere, because we know about Ridley Scott's amazing run after this.
Yeah. He went on to Blade Runner.
He went on to Blade Runner, and then he went on to other
So
films
you're
of
telling me
equal
Ridley
stature.
Scott wanted to do Legend instead of Aliens? Although,
Don't you
to be
see that?
fair, whatever the Alien sequel would have been, it would not have been Aliens if he had done it, because I'm fairly certain that's heavily James Cameron. I mean, that was his idea, right, to do
I mean,
Aliens.
they picked up Cameron in 1983, who was in the middle of making Terminator.
Yep.
And he's like, sure, absolutely. Takes a pass at writing the script. The studio's like, nah, that's going to suck. And he keeps working on it while he's making Terminator. And he later goes on and says that parts of Terminator are kind of a dry run to see what he's able to do with aliens.
Right.
It's hard to look back and think that Terminator is a dry run of anything.
I don't
But
see anything in Terminator to me that would be like, oh yeah, that was later
I,
reused, in
I have
Aliens
to
or
admit
anything.
something. I don't think I've seen Terminator in 20 years.
I I watch Terminator at least once a year. That's how much I love that movie.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love that movie. The only thing I will say that definitely pops up is Lance Henriksen. So he appears. He's one of the
Oh,
cops in Terminator, if you remember.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I did not remember
So he, of
because
course, pops
20
up
years.
again as Bishop.
Yes. And I mean, I think the most important crossover into Aliens is that James Cameron went back to the future and he grabbed Kyle Reese, to get him to play the role of a lifetime
Yes.
with Hicks.
That's so funny. I mentioned Lance Henriksen, and then you, who haven't seen the movie in 20 years, grabs one of the main characters who also, of course, appears in Aliens, and I didn't even recall that.
Like, I immediately saw him and I knew.
Yeah.
And so I started looking, and the other big James Cameron player in Aliens, who is it?
Oh my
This is
god.
my
Hold
favorite
on.
one.
Hold on. Oh yeah, Bill Paxton.
Yeah, Bill Paxton.
Of course.
What did he do in Terminator?
He was a punk at the beginning when Arnold Schwarzenegger's character first comes back and he's all naked and he's walking through. He's he's got this huge mohawk and he's like, hey, look at this guy. Yeah. And they pull a knife on him and everything. And Schwarzenegger beats the hell out of them all and steals their clothes. So
Oh.
that's it. Paxton doesn't have a big role. But from that movie on, correct me if I'm wrong, he may have been in James Cameron's prior film. I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure that's where he started with Cameron, and then he went on to appear in a number of Cameron films after that.
Cameron's one of those guys that really hangs on to the people he likes. Uh,
So after Aliens, Paxton, was he in anything other than True Lies? Oh yeah,
uh,
Titanic, of course. He was
I
the
mean,
explorer in Titanic.
The Explorer?
Remember?
I've only
Who,
seen Titanic once.
okay. The exploration team that goes underwater to find the Titanic, because they're looking for the heart of the ocean or whatever it's called.
Oh, Brock Lovett. Yes.
Is that his name?
That's his name.
Come on. I would love if you just knew that off the top of your head. Oh yeah, Brock Lovett. You don't forget a name like Brock Lovett.
You absolutely
Anyway,
do
so
not.
he's the one that talks to the old lady, and she's the one that tells him a story about Jack and Rose, right?
Oh.
So yeah, so
I,
that's Bill Paxton's other James Cameron thing. But he's great in True Lies too. He plays the shitty car salesman that's trying to bang Schwarzenegger's wife.
rest in peace,
Yeah,
Bill
totally.
Bill Paxton.
He was a great guy.
Great. And for many years, I mixed him up with Bill Pullman, but
Everybody has. Everybody has. And whether they mix them up or not, they always mix up the names, if anything,
Mm-hmm.
Game over, man. Game over.
But no, that's not even the important one. I'm talking about Jeanette Goldstein as Private Vasquez, who later
She's
goes
in
on to
Terminator?
appear in Terminator 2.
Okay.
She's the stepmom.
No shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Vasquez is the stepmom?
And yep, who is unceremoniously
She's such a
sliced and diced.
badass in Aliens.
And she's such a homemaker in
She's
Terminator 2.
still kind of she's got an edge to her in Terminator 2 because she's all, frayed hair and out of her mind with John's juvenile delinquency.
I know. John really was a handful. And,
Oh my God.
Terminator, I hope we will get to someday. Because I swear
Terminator
I've
2
seen,
seems like a obvious one we have to cover, right?
I've seen Terminator 3 more times than Terminator.
This is
And that's,
a real eye-opener.
it's absolutely crazy. And I really like Salvation. I don't know. I just like movies.
I love
And
Salvation, and I do not understand the hate it gets. I thought it
Yeah.
was a fine film, and I didn't think it was amazing. I just thought it was really good, and I was like, "This is a worthy sequel to the franchise." I mean, it's no Terminator 2, but
And what was that next one?
and then they did Genesis, where they tried to kind of reboot it within the same universe,
Yeah.
and that
was
just
bad.
I watched it recently. I hadn't seen it until maybe a couple months ago. And it's forgettable, obviously, because I had just watched it and didn't really enjoy it that much. And then the newest one, that's all right.
I loved it.
It's fine.
I'm a big fan of that actress whose name is escaping me.
Linda Hamilton,
No.
the other girl.
The other girl.
Yeah, Mackenzie.
Yes, Mackenzie. Is it Phillips?
No, I think Mackenzie Phillips was
Davis?
in Mackenzie Davis. I believe Mackenzie Phillips is John Phillips' daughter, who was a musician. She was in, they were
I no
in
longer
the
care
Mamas and
because
the
I'm looking at
Papas.
a picture of Mackenzie
They were in the
Davis.
Mamas and the Papas. That's who you brought up, Mackenzie Phillips. Anyway, she wasn't in the Mamas and the Papas. She's the daughter of one. She's got a crazy story. Let's go into that tangent. No, just kidding.
But Mackenzie Davis is one of the most talented and beautiful people I've ever seen in my life. And
She was in that
please come
show,
on the podcast.
Halt and Catch Fire. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watched the first couple episodes, but I didn't really get into it.
It really goes in interesting directions later on. People
It seemed
still
fun, right? Because it was all
Yeah.
early computer stuff, which is nerdy and fun.
Yeah, and it stays nerdy. Like Mackenzie Davis starts a gaming company with dial-up internet. Anyway.
So we're talking about the sequels to True Lies? Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
'Cause I didn't think there was one.
I am shocked that there wasn't one, by the way, because James Cameron loves a good sequel.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, what was her name? Mia Carrere? How do you say that name?
Tia
Tia Carrere something.
Carrera.
Where did she go?
Not too many places after that movie, I feel like.
Like, I feel like she got left.
I mean, she
in
was
Cuba.
huge in Wayne's World and maybe a couple other things, and then True Lies was probably one of the last times I remember really seeing her prominently in a film.
Speaking of the last times you see somebody prominently in a film, the actress playing Newt,
Yes.
she immediately quit acting after this movie.
Yeah, and I don't think it was any bad feelings about it. I think she just didn't want to be an actress.
Yeah. Carrie Henn does a
Yeah.
great job with Newt, and
Did not
I
bring her back for the second sequel, Alien 3, to be dead in a
yeah
pod. But we'll get to that movie.
yeah we'll get to that,
We'll
and
get to that
because
fucking movie.
next episode we're just doing a double feature, right? Alien 3 and then
Yeah, because I don't want to talk about this franchise forever. So I figure next episode could be Alien 3 and Resurrection together because those are two fun movies.
yeah. And if the movie has that's Aliens has the quality and content that really deserves an entire episode. Alien 3 and Alien, it feels like the quality of this franchise goes down with each installment.
Well, I have a interesting theory about that. We can
Yeah.
get to in a little bit, but
All right.
maybe we should get back on track and we should just talk about the film, the amazing action sci-fi film Aliens. Which is there another action sci-fi film that you can say is better than Aliens?
Hmm. Oh God, you're putting me on the spot.
Think about it. I mean, I don't really think there is. I think there's movies that come close, and maybe there's one that is its equal. But I would say that Aliens does everything right as far as, hey, it's the 1980s. We're making a sci-fi movie, and we're making an action movie with Sigourney Weaver as the lead. What are we gonna do? And James Cameron knocks it out of the park.
He does. He does do that. I I keep thinking about Aliens right now, so Predator immediately popped into my head,
Yeah,
and
I mean it's
there's
slightly sci-fi, but I
but
just
there's
feel
some great action in
since they're
there.
Earth based, it never feels like a sci-fi movie to me. It feels more strictly action. He just happens to be an alien, you know.
Eh, fair. Well, I cannot think of one. I will chime in if I think of one
Please, yeah.
later. Um, but yes, Aliens, directed by James Cameron, direct sequel to the movie Alien, picks up 57 years later.
Yeah, and that's a
That
shock to her to find that out. She's
yeah,
been in
yeah.
hypersleep for 57 years.
And as it turns out, not much has changed.
No, nothing at all. Except now they wear their collars up on their sports jackets.
Yep, it's basically gone from the 80s
That's pretty much
to
it.
the 2010s, and yeah.
Because when Paul
Um,
Reiser first enters, he has that. Are his sleeves pushed up too? I forget, but I know he's got like his collar up on his jacket or some shit. And I'm like, oh, it's the future.
so yeah,
Yes. So
but
the movie kicks off with Wayland Yutani, the company, and they go and find her space shuttle that left the or the space evacuation capsule, whatever, that left the Nostromo in Alien. She's been in hypersleep. She thinks maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. Turns out Paul Reiser tells her
57 years.
57 years. So she's floored.
Yeah. She's just absolutely excited.
Well, now we should mention there's a extended version of the film.
Yep.
Uh,
Which is the one I watched.
yes, I've seen both of them. That's probably the one I watched most recently. And I'd seen it before, but I did recall that, and I think Sigourney Weaver was a little upset that they cut this part out, but they cut out the part that she had a daughter. And
Wait, that's not in the original?
No, it's not. It's cut out of the
Oh.
original version.
Oh wow, I've watched it so many times that
Right.
I
The
forgot.
the mention of her daughter's cut out of the original, and or is not in the theatrical version, and the whole storyline with the people living on that planet and Newt's parents finding the alien and stuff like that. That's all cut out of the theatrical part.
Right.
Now I
knew
will
that
say,
part.
to good effect. I think it was a good, in my opinion, it was a good choice. I don't think any of that stuff's. I think that stuff's fun for an extended version, and it's perfectly fine, but it's not needed for the theatrical version. And I would say there's no need for her to have a daughter. I know why she had a daughter is because then you go, oh, now Newt's like her surrogate daughter, and I see this connection. But I don't think that's needed. I think you definitely get that connection with her and Newt, especially when she's fighting the alien queen at the end, who's defending her children and that kind of thing. You don't need any of the knowledge that Ripley had a daughter originally, anyways, in order to feel their connection at the end. So that's why I think they made a good choice in cutting it out if they had to.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But in reality, I enjoy them both.
Yeah, they're
So
perfectly fine.
pick your version and stick with it. They're both
The
great.
thing that bothered me, I guess, just as a parent, is just like, really? She is like gonna go mine some ore and be away from her kid for however many, like a year or something, just to be a miner? I'm like,
Right.
mother or father, whoever, it seems like if you're gonna be away for a year, it better be serving your country or something. You know what I mean? Like something important where you expect that kind of sacrifice. But just to go do a job of mining metal out of a planet, you're gonna miss your child's, like childhood or something. It just seemed crazy to me, and I think that may have, in my opinion, that may have also led into the fact where they were just like, she doesn't really need a daughter. That'd be weird. Why would she leave her behind that long?
Makes total sense. And yeah, it takes away from Ripley as the strong character if she. Well, does it take away? That's hard. I don't
I
know.
don't think it takes away, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Not a
just
good
think it's
mom.
it's it's so well done that when she uh, forms this bond with Newt, that you don't, it doesn't matter what came before anyways. I think it's pretty genuine just watching the theatrical version. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah. So we're on the space station above Earth, and Ripley is getting reintegrated. And she's hanging out with Paul Reiser, and he's kind of showing her the ropes.
Burke.
Burke.
Yeah,
Carter
Burke.
J. Burke. Well, Carter, working for the evil corporation, uh, has other things in mind with Ripley. Um, but first things first, she goes but in front of a review board to.
Yeah, because they all have questions about what happened. Even though it's been 57 years, it's like there's still this open investigation about what happened. So they're trying to question her about it.
Yeah, it'd probably be like Amelia Earhart showing up again today. There'd
Right.
be an
They'd want to know why.
inquiry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they
Well,
had.
also, I mean, she blew up like $1 billion mining facility too. So it's kind of like, hey, I know it's been half a century, but we just kind of want to know why you did that.
Well, I don't even think they know that. Like, I'm sure they had a file that said Nostromo missing, and they just
Yeah.
have never known what happened to one of their giant mining ships.
Yeah, see, my thought is they know it was destroyed. They know it's inoperable. They know it wherever, and they know she's the only survivor from it. They didn't know there was any survivors from it. Because I think they could talk to Mother.
Yes,
Um,
they would know about everything then, man.
well, they're asking her to explain the story, and they don't believe it. But I think I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't. I think that Paul Reiser very clearly knew that those alien creatures were on that moon because he sent Newt's family to go check it out.
Well, I think he sends them after that story. Like, we have time pass, and yeah, that was something like that bothered me throughout the first half of this movie. We knew, we didn't know that Paul Reiser's character sent those people in a greedy
Well,
attempt to get some
that
money.
doesn't bother you. I mean, you bother you as in, and you think it's a plot hole, or bother you as in you were mad
It
when you found out.
it bothered me as a plot hole. I was like, oh yeah, magically after 57 years, the aliens are just gonna pop out now. Like, I was like, that's some crappy writing. I don't know what is going on here.
See, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as what a coincidence, but I was going with it, hoping it would be explained, and it was that he was the cause of it. He knew it was there. But you may be right in that he knew it was there based on her story. But I think that he already knew.
If he already knew, they already would have sent people to get them.
That's true. What am I trying to say? I don't know.
Like
Okay,
57
so she
years
tells
ago.
this crazy story and they don't want to hear it,
Yeah.
or they don't want to believe it or whatever.
And Paul Reiser, Miss Burke is the only one that believes
But
her.
he does believe her. Burke does believe her.
Yeah. And then
Or he believes her enough to think like, I wonder if there's some, because he's another, he's like, I'm trying to think of their names from Alien. He's like
he's like Ian Holm.
Parker
Parker.
and hold on, Harry Dean Stanton's character Brett. He's like Parker and Brett, who are all about the money. They're like, they have this plan. We want more money for this mining expedition. These are the two characters in the original film. Uh, and that's Carter's drive as well.
Oh yeah,
He's all about the money. He wants to make a big discovery. He wants to be rich. He wants to make a name for himself and make a lot of money.
this
So
is
I think
absolutely
that's why
true.
he takes a chance on Ripley's story. And you're probably right. And then from that crazy story, he's like, well, if she's right, this could be an amazing find. And that's why he sends the colonists out.
Do you know who he reminds me of? He reminds
No.
me of Newman's character in Jurassic Park. Just
Yeah,
just
a
this
little bit.
sweaty guy that wants to be rich, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Oh,
Yep.
Newman. That's another series that we
Newman.
should totally cover in the
But
future.
Newman was like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like he was the patsy, I guess, for this company. Whereas Burke's kind of all he's kind of everything on his own.
Yeah,
He may be a patsy, but at the same time, he's the one that also is kind of the brains behind it.
Yeah, he's totally playing it on his own. So
Right.
anyway, bunch of colonists on the original planet from the original movie LV-426 just suddenly stop communicating, and Burke lets Ripley know, and he's basically launching a mission to
Yeah.
go
Marines.
with Marines to go and figure out what happened. Big question here. So, does this company own the Marines?
That I don't know.
Like
That is weird.
they own the space, or they own the settlement on LV-426. This company is so huge that they can just call up the Marines and say, "Hey, you guys got to come with us."
I think in this future, the corporation itself is like the government.
It almost is. It's like an evil empire almost.
Like they have their own military and their own police force.
So if Ridley Scott's take on Star Wars from Alien was, this is what space would actually be like, him just making it grounded in reality, what James Cameron did was, this is my version of Star Wars where they wouldn't be stupid stormtroopers, they would be Marines and they would act like soldiers that we recognize. And so
Yeah.
again, we have this great humanizing of the Star Wars experience by, yeah, it's absolutely, they're just stormtroopers, man. That's all they are.
Pretty much. I can see that.
Um, but so there's that. There's a couple other things we discover from this. They have the American flag on their uniforms. So in this future, they're still in America.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know.
So they're still different countries. And Bill Paxton is kind of racist to Vasquez.
Yep.
What was
It's the 80s casual racism and casual misogyny that was pretty apparent or pretty rife throughout a lot of scripts. Played for laughs, I don't think anybody was necessarily
yeah,
I don't think they were mean about it. You know what I mean? I don't think they were evil about it. I just think it was literally played for laughs, just like everything else.
well, no, but
And
if
frankly, it wouldn't be acceptable nowadays, but it's pretty common in the movies from the past.
in this future, though, James Cameron is so bleak. He's like, there's still going to be countries, the corporations are going to steal all the money that they can, and there's totally still going to be racism. Like, it's a very
Yeah.
dreary form of the future.
Well, it's hard to see beyond. I mean, I think unless you're a like one of the classic sci-fi writers like Bradbury or Isaac Asimov, the guys that really had a scientific brain, they could see a future that would be more based in reality and based in fact, and they see how positive things would turn out. But if you have a great storyteller like James Cameron, it's hard to see beyond your generation. I think when you're in the 1980s and you want to make a future movie and you're a film director and you're a storyteller like James Cameron, I think it's hard to see beyond the negative of the Reagan era. You know what I mean? Like you'll see a future, but you're only going to see a future built on on the present you're living in now. That's the way I see about it. That's why a lot of future movies by a lot of these filmmakers are kind of bleak. I just don't think they have that Gene Roddenberry kind of, vision of the future where everything's peaceful.
I like that, man. Um, where was I going with that? I completely forget. Oh, they were bleak, yeah. So
Yeah.
they jump on a ship with a bunch of stormtroopers, and they're
Yeah,
going.
because Ripley wasn't interested in it. She kind of just got a normal job, right? She went back to working on the Death Star, you could say,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Front loaders, whatever, whatever thing, body loaded, whatever they call them. Foreshadowing, her use of those big machines later.
Does that count as a
But
trope? Because that's a trope that's so used now. But I don't,
what?
like, oh, look, I'm going to show her using this forklift now so that when she uses it later, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if foreshadowing is a trope. I would just call it foreshadowing.
Well, I mean,
But
we don't even need
it's
that.
it's a cliche,
Like,
I guess.
that's like saying that you have to show Rey getting trained before she uses the Force. Otherwise, how does she
Yeah.
use the Force? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's just this. You want to bring the audience along on the journey with you, so I guess you feel like you need to throw some things out there just so they can have that experience. Like, oh right. I don't know. I think you know what. When you see that image at the end of the door, the music ceases and the door opens, and she's in that full body forklift thing. I think it's a more amazing of an image and more of a badass image because it was already briefly seen in the beginning of the movie. I don't think it would have as much power if it just appeared out of nowhere. So I do think that's the importance of foreshadowing.
sure, whatever.
What do you think about that?
I want to talk about these Marines more. So they're on the ship, and we're getting to know the Marines.
Right.
And again, we have.
Well, I just wanted to fill in a little info that Burke is really trying to get her to go, but she's not interested. Why would she want to go back? She's not going to this. She's not dealing with these aliens anymore. Her life's moved on. Blah 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 blah. But she keeps having nightmares about it, and I think Ripley feels that she can't move beyond it unless she faces it head on.
Yeah.
It's something in her so anyways, so she calls up Burke and says like, all right, I'm in. But, how are we going to do this? We got to do this right. So Burke like kind of reassures her like, look, it's a military operation. We got all these Marines. You'll be safe. You'll be fine. And the commander, it's like his first or second mission.
Gorman.
So Gorman. So he seems like he knows what he's doing, but obviously we'll find out he's not really up for the task.
I really like his arc, by the way.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that in a little bit.
So the Marines.
Yeah, Gorman's in charge. He's lieutenant. Al Matthews is the next in line with Sergeant Apone, and
Yeah,
he's
Apone.
he's the cliched, tough, grizzled, has a cigar in his mouth at all times. Army
Right,
officer.
Carl Weathers wasn't available, I guess. So
Yep, that's exactly
they got
right.
this guy. They got this guy's his twin to appear in this one.
We've obviously got Bill Paxton as the comedic relief, Hudson, and then
Yeah, Paxton's the comedic relief, but he's also I can't think of the word I'm trying to say. He's almost like this. He becomes the guy you worry about the most too. Like you're just waiting for something bad to happen to him because he's complaining the most.
and you want him to die, but you also want him to be okay.
See,
Like,
I
he's
don't
an
want him
annoying
to
kid.
die. I didn't feel like I wanted him to die. I just knew that he was going to, and I was just like, man, like, where's this? The suspense is killing me with this guy. Like, when is he gonna get taken out?
And I just need to say it again. Kyle Reese as Hicks,
Yep.
Michael Biehn. When James Cameron started making this movie, I imagine him saying, "We're gonna make stormtroopers real, number one, and we're gonna make Sigourney Weaver wanna fuck." Because the second Hicks gets eyes on her, he is sweaty as sweaty can be. Like, I love the chemistry between the two of them, and they really make it real without making it, what's the word, overwritten, or just what we've seen over and over. Like, they flirt. They're flirty.
Yeah, they don't seal the deal, but you could imagine they could.
Oh, that's the she wanted to make sure he was tucked away safe at the end of this movie with in that sleep pad.
Right.
Yeah, and you could see it in her face in Alien 3, like, oh, I blew it.
She's a woman. He's a man. This is what happens in space.
Yeah, yeah. What else to mention about these Marines?
Well, they're very, you know, in your face, misogynistic, borderline racist. You know, they're like I don't know if Cameron has an affinity for the military or a complete disdain for them. Maybe he has both. And that's why he pictures them as he introduces them as the brainless idiots that you want to think soldiers are, which makes them expendable. I think through the course of the movie, he gives, you know, you learn more about them, and you don't feel that they're just the brainless idiots they're introduced as, but they don't get much better, and then they kind of die off anyways.
All of the Marines, except for Michael Biehn, actually went through basically boot camp. I'm not sure how intense it was, but they wanted them to, you know, act the part.
Right.
And what I really like in this movie is when we have them not in action, we see them as them normal selves. But when we have them go into action, like, they actually go to work. And
yeah, they only exist really when they're fighting. I feel like that's kind of a character trait, is that they don't know the best way to operate, you know, as civilians. They only really know how to fight and do their job.
That's a nice take. I like that.
And I don't know if Cameron was the one who touched on this when he wrote the script, or it was the producers that kind of came up with the story, but I sensed it as well, and they spoke about this, that there's kind of an allusion to the Vietnam War. I don't know if you read about this as well, but it definitely stood out to me, in that you have these badass people with all of their guns and everything, and they're just like, you know what? We're going to go into this place, and we're going to wipe these savages off the map. Nothing can stop us. And then they show up, and they're completely outnumbered, and even though they have the advanced technology, it's useless against these fighters. These efficient, deadly killers. You know what I mean? And that was kind of guerrilla warfare in the Vietnam War. And I think that was Cameron's take on it. That's kind of how he felt the military was as well.
Yep.
And this was his kind of Vietnam War take.
I read that too.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
I think that was mostly a Cameron thing.
Also, this movie proves that if someone just had a gun on the Nostromo, the movie wouldn't have been very long at all.
Right, because in this movie,
you know what I mean?
We have
you only have an
hundreds.
alien.
Yeah.
Singular.
If Ripley had
kills
just
everybody.
had a car, she runs one of these things over in a car.
Exactly.
Which,
but in the movie Aliens, Cameron's like, they're like, hey, what do you want to do for a sequel? I got a great idea. I'm gonna have more than one alien. Oh, like two? No. Like many. And we're gonna put an S on the end of the word. It's gonna be aliens, plural.
yeah,
And
so
they're just like, make that movie.
in theory, how many settlers did they say there were?
It was like 147.
It was.
I don't know. I just picked that number out.
You're pretty close in my mind. But in theory, we'd have that many aliens. So there were
Yeah, exactly.
more than 100, less than 200 ish.
Now, here's my other question about aliens, and even Alien. Does the xenomorph only exist because it used an alien as a host? Or would the alien look different if it was another host?
It would look.
But since a human is the host, is that why it looks like a xenomorph?
Well, the aliens themselves are xenomorphs, and I think that's supposed to mean they. What is the definition of that? I'm looking it up as we speak, but we later find out that yes, there can be different kinds based on the host.
Yeah, because Alien 3, it's a dog, right?
Um,
So it gives it more of a four-legged approach. But you're right, the head and the whole sleek xenomorphy thing does exist, probably no matter the host. Because the queen, right? The queen looks like a xenomorph in I guess that's what I'm imagining.
Yeah, that thing was just crazy. And I like this take again. Like they look at Star Wars and they say, "Hey, look at all these friendly aliens," and they go back and they say, "Chances are the aliens are bugs, just disgusting, intelligent
Yeah.
bugs, and all they want to do is reproduce." And this is the alien that we got. And there's hundreds of them on this settlement, and they're going down there to figure out what happened to these settlers and destroy them if they have to. And what do we get? We get the ship.
What do we get?
We get the ship coming to the planet, and they land on another one of those little vessels, like in the first one.
The big ship comes, and there's like a little
Yeah.
reconnaissance military vehicle, right? That comes from the ship, and then they land, and then they have like another driving thing inside that, right?
Yeah, they've got a Batmobile in there.
They got a Batmobile. There you go.
And they go and they check out the station, and there's nobody there.
Place is deserted.
Deserted.
Totally. They don't know where they are. Although they have the heat-seeking body things or whatever, so they can check movement, so they see that they're all somewhere, but they're not anywhere.
Did you which version
That
did you
comes
watch
later.
for the podcast?
Well, I watched the original, the theatrical version maybe 3 weeks ago, and then I just watched the extended version maybe a week ago.
So the biggest thing for me is just that there's a bar there, and it just says bar. Like, that was weird. That's all.
I don't remember.
There was a bar, and it.
like a restaurant bar, like a drinking place bar.
Yes.
Okay.
Not a pole for people to dance on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's a colony, right? So they got to have entertainment and places for people to do when they're not working.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, what do they do there? It's a big fusion reactor.
Yeah.
What do they explain
Yeah, so
was the purpose of the colonists?
the colonists were just hanging out. The big fusion reactor is the entire colony allows for colonists, but also is changing the atmosphere.
It's
So that
terraforming the planet,
terraforming,
isn't that it?
yes.
Gotcha.
And they see all of the little beacons for all the people in underneath the fusion reactor.
Yes.
Actually, maybe one of the heat exchanges of the fusion reactor, whatever. But it's nice and warm there. So they get in the Batmobile and they go to check it out. And what happens? All dead. All of the residents are just like glued to the wall by the aliens to be used as hosts. And then we get our own chestbuster scene where there's
the better chestbuster scene. And Ripley and Gorman and Burke are all in the vehicle, and they're watching the Marines' body cameras and everything, and listening to their microphones. She gets to witness the scene again, and I think that's great acting on her part. I love that part. I mean, she's a great actress, so I shouldn't say like, oh, this part's great acting. But I just love that part when she's watching it and she like grabs her own chest, and you can tell she's like reliving the nightmare of the Nostromo over again. Just watching the new chestbuster scene.
Yeah.
So
she's
for her, there's
amazing
little
in this
doubt
movie.
that they're in trouble now.
Like at first she didn't even want to sign on to this movie, and James Cameron
Right.
talked her into it, but she gives it her all.
Yeah.
And yeah, new chestbuster scene. They discover the aliens are for real, but
Well, they burn it,
yeah,
They and I think that sets it all. That sets the whole movie off right from there, because they killed the young, and now all of the aliens come out from hiding,
yeah,
and it's a giant massacre.
which were just hanging out on the walls, not doing anything to them.
Yeah.
Until then,
Great effect. I love that one.
that was, and it all looked practical. I mean, we're talking '86, so those aliens were just people running around being scary.
Yeah.
And the aliens in here feel like they have a slightly different design than the alien in Alien.
Yeah, they definitely do.
And I like it. It's a nice little upgrade. So yeah, they burn the baby. Aliens come up from everywhere. They're getting their butts kicked.
Oh, and we should mention that none of them, well, not very many of them, have ammunition because, whoops, they're near a fusion reactor, so they don't want to blow the place up. So they're told, gather all your ammo up and throw it into this bag, and this one guy's gonna be in charge of it. Now, I can't imagine that they didn't have a ton of ammo on them, so everybody handing one piece of ammo was just kind of ridiculous. I thought, like, well, they obviously have extras, as you find out most of them do, anyways. You know?
Yeah, because Vasquez immediately pulls out a couple of replacements for their giant guns
Right.
that are strapped to their body. I don't know
Yeah,
the
they're on
name
steady cams.
of the other guy. I don't even know if I caught it.
Anyway, yeah, so they get their ass kicked. A lot of people die, and of course the guy with the bag of ammunition, it gets caught fire and explodes, so they are down all that ammo as well. Ripley's the only one that knows it's a fight they can't win, and this is when the inexperience of Gorman takes over.
Or the inexperience. Yeah, Gorman just freezes up and Ripley takes the lead. She takes the Batmobile and she plunges right into the reactor, right towards these people.
Yeah, goes and gets him. She's got to save him.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for her taking control, they'd all be dead.
Well,
so she rescues a couple of them.
yeah. So who do we still have? We have Hicks. We have
Vasquez.
Bishop. We haven't talked about Bishop. There's another android on this mission.
Yes, absolutely. She
And-
finds that out early on. It's not a surprise this time that he's an android.
Right, and she just distrusts androids so much because of Ian
Right.
Holm that she just wants Bishop to stay away. So yeah, Paxton lives. Vasquez.
So she
lives.
has her prejudices too, just like any
Yeah,
person.
and it's not really an arc for Bishop, but because he's an android and he's kind of like just smooth.
Right.
But Ripley has a nice arc where she goes from not trusting him to trusting him to
Yeah,
really being
it's like
upset.
It's like your best friend at the end.
Yeah,
Well, I'd say Hicks is probably your best friend, but
yeah.
Bishop comes in as a close second.
Hicks is a little more than best friends, if you know what I mean. So she drives the Batmobile out of there, and they're like, all right, let's just get off this planet and blow up this whole place. Paul Reiser. I just said Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd.
Paul Reiser is all like, we can't do that. And Hicks is like,
this is $1 billion installation. It's very expensive. I can't authorize that. Well, with the corporal now dead, Hicks is actually the one in charge, so I think it's his call.
yeah, and in his smoothest voice, he looks at Ripley and says, I think we're going to go into orbit and nuke it
Blow it up from space.
just to be safe.
It's the only way to be sure.
Oh my God.
And they have that look at each other. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, they call the ship down. Hey, come pick us up. No problem. And there's a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense, but yeah, it's just so convenient that an alien pops up where she landed and takes out the pilot. She crashes while she's fighting. And
Yep, so now they're screwed, and they're all stuck on the planet.
absolutely screwed. And it's getting dark, as Newt points out. We haven't really talked about Newt being introduced.
I was just going to say, this is before or after they find, but this was after they found Newt.
Yeah, they
so
find
Newt
Newt
is
almost
a
immediately.
surviving colonist, like the only surviving colonist, or only non-abducted colonist.
Yep, and she's
She's just a young girl who's managed to survive there for, I don't know, weeks,
yeah.
months.
And I mean, exactly months, just because it took them probably months to get to this planet once they figured out that
I see, right.
yeah.
And based on her living quarters, where she's kind of hiding out, it's pretty trash, so it looks like she's been there for months, I would say.
Yep. And she's
Yeah, so New
adorable.
But I already, I mean, Sigourney Ripley wants to, care for her.
Yeah, she's the only one who can break through with Newt. And Newt,
I mean, Gorman does an awful job of trying to communicate with her.
oh God.
In that like interrogation scene. She's just pointless. She's wasting our time. And I'm like, this is not how you talk to a kid, you idiot. She's not going to tell you anything.
Like, you know that's how he talks to his stepchildren. That's just exactly...
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You catch more flies with honey. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, they're screwed. They're stuck there.
Yeah,
Newt's
there's
like...
no way to get off the planet except for Bishop, right?
They come out
'Cause
at
he's
night.
up there in the ship as well.
Oh, no, Bishop's with them.
Oh, Bishop is with them, right? But yes, and he can radio communicate for another ship. So that's their only plan. So what they have to do is, Newt's like, hey, it's getting dark. We got to go. They come out at night. We have to go take shelter. So they go back to the
yeah, the
colonists
control
living
center.
areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just hunker down for the night. And the sentries are. I don't remember the sentries from the last time I watched it, but I thought it was a nice touch.
Like they put up the weapons.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
they were just
right.
automatic guns that detected motion.
Yeah.
We get
Yeah,
to
like
watch
detecting weapons.
as there's a tunnel from there to the fusion reactor that the aliens are using to navigate. And they set up two in there, and you get to watch the rounds go down and down and down as the aliens approach. And that thing must have killed hundreds of them, or a ton of them.
Yeah, I would say dozens, maybe. I don't know.
Dozens and dozens.
Yeah, because they are a savage creature, yet they are smart enough to work together. And the first aliens that get taken out by those things, probably an accident. But I think they also realize that the more that sacrifices themselves, the more ammo will be lost. So I feel like it's almost a kamikaze mission for a lot of them.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. Like that's how I just think bugs would think. Like they don't care.
But they're smart. It's like the majority rules. They sacrifice themselves for the greater good.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the queen told them to do it. Whatever.
Whatever. And so they're starting to get attacked. At the same time, we find out that in their first attack, they messed up the fusion reactor, and it's going to blow. I think what they have 4 hours.
Yeah, something like that. Now they have a clock. They have a deadline clock. They got to get off, or they're all going to be blown up in a giant nuclear explosion.
Yeah. And so Bishop, good old Lance Henriksen, has to crawl through a tiny tube.
Well, I think at this point is when the facehuggers are loose.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah.
Before Bishop crawls
so
away.
they hunker down for the night, and Newt and Ripley are they go into their own little area to get some sleep, and the facehuggers are in there because the colonists discovered the eggs and took back samples. I think they probably took back samples because they were on people, right? Isn't that how it went?
Yep, and they killed the people, but they got the facehuggers off alive before eggs.
Right.
And we find out that Burke has told Bishop to keep the 2 living samples, and we're taking them with us.
And we forgot to mention that because Ripley said, look, I'm only going to go on this mission with you if we kill every last one of them.
Yeah.
And he said, you have my word.
And so,
but of course he's a big liar, and Bishop says, and tells Ripley so.
Yeah, Ripley knows, and then they go to sleep. And she goes to sleep
right,
with her
so
gun
she
in her
confronts
hands.
him about it, and that's where you find out Reiser Burke this whole time was just a money grubbing, wanting to be famous. This discovery wants to be named after him or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, I thought you were smarter than this, Ripley. We could make so much money. We just got to bring one of these things back. And she's like, it's impossible. Like, customs is never going to let this thing through. How would you possibly sneak it over?
Thanks, Burke.
Right. So they manage to not get face hugged by these things, Newt and Ripley.
Because Michael
get
Biehn
away.
Runs through a bulletproof glass
He's like,
window.
shoot it out! And then they blow the window and he jumps through. I love that part.
Yeah, there's no way that Ripley is getting messed up. Bean is going to be there to save that.
Right.
Because
Hicks.
they've got stuff to do. Yeah. I said Michael.
So then she knows that it was Burke who let the facehuggers loose to try to sneak. If he can impregnate one or both of them, they could sneak them back. Now, here's the thing about the Alien franchise, which, starting with this movie, you're really not sure. It's only used as a convenience whenever they need it to. There's 2 things. One is the acid blood. It's only a problem and will burn through the hull of a ship when they want it to. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you can just kill these things and their acid isn't really a problem. Or if you kill it closely, the acid will burn you. So that's used to some effect in this movie,
Yeah,
right?
and I don't understand the inconsistency there. It's probably
Right.
explained
So
away.
wouldn't the weapons have just made this enormous acid bath worth of dead aliens that would have just, sunk the whole colony into the ground? I mean, that's what it seemed like to me. It's killing all these aliens. Obviously, all their acid is just going to destroy the whole place, but it's not really talked about.
Well, like,
And then secondly, the gestation period of when someone's impregnated to when the alien is birthed is never clear.
no.
It's always whenever they need it to happen. So in the first movie, it's a matter of hours,
Yeah.
maybe a day. I don't know, with John Hurt. And then in this movie, Burke's plan is to impregnate them. 9 months later, it'll be well. They'd be in hypersleep.
Yeah, they'd
but
be
from
frozen.
getting them, I guess he hopes it's more than a few hours. I guess, but you don't really know when it would be. Anyway, but then we'll talk about Alien 3 later. But Alien 3 uses it in an extreme way, I think, which is pretty ridiculous.
Because Bill Paxton, he gets his arm melted. But it's
Yes.
not like he loses the arm. That acid
Right.
should have gone right through his arm in about 2 seconds. If it's going through iron...
Yeah, I mean, unless the Nostromo is made of balsam wood, it seems like it doesn't stop burning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It like literally keeps burning. Then when it hits the floor, goodbye to your floor.
Yeah, it took like
Better go in the
4
basement. Up,
decks.
still going into the basement. Yeah. So, but maybe that's a correction from the first movie. Maybe that's what James Cameron wanted to do, is just like, it just should be lava. You know what I mean? It just should be some acid that burns, and then
I mean, it's
no more.
It's very
you know?
possible that it doesn't do much on organic material, which is why they can have it for blood. But it also is really acidic
True.
towards metal. Like most,
Yes.
because they have to store acid somewhere, like in the real world, and I think acid's
Yeah, I mean,
stored
like,
in,
it doesn't burn
plastic
through
jugs.
glass and some plastics.
Yeah. So yeah,
If my Breaking Bad knowledge is correct,
and I am sure that it is.
there's certain plastics it won't burn through, but metal it can burn through. Remember that? Do you remember some of the first episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only season I ever watched, was like the first one. So
It's a pretty good show.
yeah, that's what I hear.
Maybe
someday. All right, how are we doing here?
Oh yeah, so they're all running to escape, and the ship is on its way, and they're crawling. Newt again saves the day and leads them through air ducts.
She knows what's going on.
And Bill Paxton has already gotten it, so that's sad.
Yeah, so he dies.
We got Ripley left. We've got Hicks left. Paul Reiser gets it. He opens the door and there's an alien right in his face.
Yeah, this pretty much sets off the last Marine action sequence, right?
Yep.
Because they get past the facehugger problem. They thought they secured everything, but they're getting movement outside now that the sentry guns aren't an issue for the aliens anymore. And it's a very intense scene. I love it when they're all huddled together and you just have what is Bill Paxton's name? Hudson. You just have Hudson's character saying like, 10 meters, man. 8 meters. And they're like, that's impossible. That's inside the room. I'm reading it right, man. It says it's 5 meters. And Ripley's like, we looked at everything. The floor, the doors. And then it occurs to her like, oh, the ceiling. Shit.
Oh.
And then when Hicks looks up through the ceiling with the flashlight, see, the thing Cameron does amazingly with his films is that he knows exactly when to drop the sound. You know what I mean? To like, for that ultimate suspense. So like everything's like do 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 suspenseful music, and then right when you see the slow opening of the ceiling tile, it's like silent. And then he just like his head pops up and he swings the flashlight around, and that's wow, and all these aliens are crawling toward him and shit.
Yeah, it's good.
I just wanted to talk about that scene because I love that scene so much. So that kicks off the last Marine fight scene. A lot of them get killed there, and that leads to an exciting escape with Ripley and Hicks and Bishop and Newt. And I believe that's it, right? Because Vasquez and Gorman, who she always hated anyways because he was a useless commander, they have one final embrace where it's just like, "You're always an asshole, Gorman."
Yes.
And they hold the grenade and they blow up, and
And it's such a
that
great
gives
arc for Gorman, just
yeah
because he
yeah
starts as a scared little nobody, and then at the end he's coming back for the toughest Marine,
right.
and
And she softens a little too, like
yeah, it was great.
yeah, it's not. So that's why I think that Cameron definitely has a disdain for the military, but at the same time, I think he loves the manliness of it all. So he gives them he shows them as idiots, but then he gives them each most the important ones. He gives a little bit of a character development, so it does work
And
at the end of their story arcs.
I don't think there's a director better at strong female characters.
Yeah, I mean, especially since he created Ripley and Linda and Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor.
It's hard to say another director that had two such iconic action heroines.
Yeah.
All right, so the Marines had their final battle.
Yep. And
Bishop is now like, look, I can crawl through this little thing here, and I have to get to this one place that I can radio control the second evacuation shuttle. I'll bring it down here. I'll jump in it. I'll come pick you guys up. Deal? That's a plan. So he takes off to do that.
yep. And well, like then it's the Marine final battle, and then they escape.
Oh, he did that before?
Yeah, he
Okay,
started that.
so he's
one.
off doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have the final Marine battle, and then they crawl through the air ducts to where
Yes,
Bishop
and that's
is.
when Newt is lost.
And yep, Newt gets taken. And Ripley, having a special set of skills, goes to get her back.
And quite an affinity for the child now.
Yes, seems to like her quite a bit. I think she's like,
And
free kid.
when does Hicks get injured? Because Hicks get injured and he's kind of
It's
out of commission.
It's right away. I don't remember why the alien popped up and did that, because they were basically, we're not leaving, and then he's like, okay, and then we see them flying into the reactor.
Yeah, well, they find Newt gets lost in the air ducts, and then they find her, but she's under the grating, and that's when another awesome shot of the alien coming out of the water.
Yeah,
Which is pretty sweet.
yeah, that
Takes Newt, and they can't get through the grating fast enough. But I feel like he gets injured around that point.
that sounds
Anyway, Bishop has the ship now, right? So they load into the ship.
Yep.
She says, "We're not leaving." He's like, "We're not leaving?"
Yes, that's
But it's going to blow in like 27 minutes or something like that.
he
This
said,
is
we've got plenty of time. We've got 20.
Yeah, we got plenty of time to leave.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "But we're not leaving." Okay, well now we don't have as much time. So this is the part of the movie that really, like maybe I saw it originally and then I hadn't seen it for many years, maybe like 15 years or whatever, that I always remember. And it's the part where she is in the elevator going down, or the lift, whatever you want to call it, and she's getting ready. And to me, that was one of the most memorable scenes, just because of the way it's shot, the action with the lift going down, the music, and the wind. I also love the use of wind in films. You know what I mean? Like, and Cameron uses wind through all of this last part of the film. Like where the wind is just constantly, or whatever it is, it's just this air that's just blowing her hair around, and it's just making everything just have this feel to it that just feels very suspenseful and scary at the same time.
Yeah, this is like the most iconic scene of this movie.
I wouldn't say the most iconic, but it's an iconic.
Well, like this
I think the
sequence.
most iconic is what I mentioned before, where the door opens up and she's in the suit.
Well, yeah, like that's what I mean. Like this sequence is like the big
But that comes after. That's the next sequence, though.
it all.
Yeah,
Uh,
because that's after they get back to the ship.
well,
You know.
they first see the queen, so she gets in there.
Yeah, so she's getting ready. She goes down to find Newt with it because she has a tracker on.
Yep.
Yep.
And she gets to the gross alien walls, and she picks up the tracker, and it's fallen off a Newt, and she freaks out. Meanwhile, Newt wakes up with an alien egg in front of her, screams. Ripley blows it to hell, gets Newt out of the wall.
Another point where sound is used to an amazing effect, because she finds the tracker, it's all over. Newt's dead. There's no way to find her. And then when she hears that scream is when the music kicks back in, and she's just like, there's hope again, and then she goes off and runs and finds her.
And you can see it all on Ripley's face, and I love
totally.
it. I love her in this movie. If you watch,
and again, if you didn't know anything about her having a daughter that died, you wouldn't even need you didn't need any of it to get her connection with Newt. I think
like you need to watch this movie and then Ghostbusters back to back just to see whether or not she cares while she's in Ghostbusters, or if it's just a paycheck. Or Ghostbusters 2. That should be.
I think Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 is all about working with those guys. I think that's why you do those kind of movies, is because you want to work with Dan Aykroyd, you want to work with Bill Murray.
Oh yeah.
You want to work with Harold Ramis.
Absolutely.
And Ivan Reitman, you know what I mean? And Ernie Hudson.
Harold Ramis. So anyway.
And Rick Moranis. Holy cow.
Yeah.
How could you turn down? I mean, you will be able to be in scenes with these people. You're going to want to do that movie. Even when they were doing Ghostbusters, you knew how... I think she knew how classic these guys were, these comedians, Like, someday these guys are going to be the revered comedians, we'll always remember. So I think she felt lucky to be in that movie.
We need to fit those movies in when the new one comes out.
Yeah, I was excited to see that this year, and then they, had to push it back to next year.
Yeah. I hate it.
We were talking about other sequels, how you always wanted a Fifth Element sequel. And now you feel like that will never happen without Ian Holm.
I mean, he really was the linchpin of the whole movie. Forget Bruce Willis. Forget Mila Jovovich.
Well, he could always... I mean, his purpose, though, could always be... I mean, he was part of a brotherhood, right? So it could always be, another brotherhood could be part of it, I mean, he's pretty easy to recast. And not recast his role, but to have a new person in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was thinking about everybody wants sequels. Everybody wants a Goonies sequel. And I'm just like, what? This is going to be horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't see that working.
No reason for a Goonies sequel to exist. It's only fun to see everybody back together. I get that. But it doesn't mean you should put a whole stamp on it. Like, this is now an official entry into this thing you loved as a kid. I just don't think it works. So I forever wanted a Ghostbusters 3. I would say until the new millennium. Because when it turned 2000, it was too late, I felt. I felt everybody was too old now. It wouldn't be the same. If they had made a Ghostbusters 3 in, like, 95, that would have been great. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not as good as the first, maybe not as good as the second, but it still would have been pretty good. But anything now with those guys, like legitimately making a number 3, wouldn't be good. Now, when I heard about Afterlife coming out, it's been so long that now I just kind of, it's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be a direct sequel. It can just be a fun Ghostbusters movie. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
And I gave the female one, I mean, if that's what we want to call it, the female version a shot. And I just didn't find it that funny, and I found it kind of annoying.
Yeah.
There was some fun parts to it, but overall it was just a wasted reboot, I thought.
I completely agree. Like, Ghostbusters is almost magic in a bottle, and it takes something amazing to make it work again.
I would say all of the Ghostbusters were funny in their own right, but clearly Bill Murray was the comic relief, right?
Well, I think... Well, yeah,
Yeah, so this new movie with the girls, they were all the comic relief. And I'm like, That's not how you make a movie with a team.
That
Like
is
everybody can't be the comic relief. It wasn't. That was immediately why it wasn't working for me.
that's an interesting point, yeah, because
It was just all improv, is what it felt like. Everybody was just improvising and trying to one up each other, and it totally lost any of the Ghostbuster feel to it. But anyway, that was just my take on it.
yeah. Anyway, so Ripley and Newt find the queen, and
Yeah.
they don't like that, and they
Well, because she's even talked about before, like there's all these eggs, and then she's like, "Who's laying these eggs?" And then Bishop's like, "I don't know, something we haven't seen yet."
yeah, and
You know.
then we see it, and
So here you go.
it's big,
Damn.
and it's
It's
got some
big.
extra arms.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's very scary, and it's mad. It's smart.
And it's like at this point, it's mom versus mom.
Yes, and
You know.
so Ripley shoots a couple grenades at her, and then they run away.
Well, she shoots
Flame
the flamethrower
flamethrower.
because the other aliens are going to come in and like tackle her, and she's having this like tete-a-tete, as they call it, right, with the mom, with the queen, saying like, "No, no, 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 get these guys out of here. This is between you and me."
Yeah, I love that.
So the
queen
queen's
had
like,
guards.
yeah, all right, go on. No, 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 leave us, leave us. This is between me and her. Is basically what the queen's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
But then she sees the pods opening, you know, and it's just like she knows she's screwed. So Ripley just is like, all right, you want it this way? Fine. And then she starts burning everything. And then once the flame runs out and all the ammunition, she starts shooting off grenades and, yeah, just making a mess of the place. And the queen's screaming. And so they get the hell out of there.
Yep, they get the hell out of there by jumping in an elevator. And then something happens where the movie goes from an A plus to a A, maybe an A minus.
What?
The queen jumps
kidding
in
me?
the elevator, hits the up button,
Yeah,
and
she knows what she's doing.
whistles as she's going up. How's
I mean, come on. When she breaks off of the egg sack or what, it's so gross and yet such a such a good effect.
oh yeah, it
I
was
think like this queen is so mad. She's so determined that whatever gets her to kill Ripley is what it's all about. So that's why I'm totally okay with anything, because she's not an idiot. You know, she's not just some savage creature. She's a smart brain. You know, she controls the hive. So she knows what she's doing. She can go up in an elevator. That's fine.
yeah.
Because Ripley was just as determined to go get Newt back, you know? And we're okay with that. The queen can be just as determined to have her revenge on Ripley.
So
That's the way I see it.
the ship isn't there when she gets to the loading dock. She thinks that Bishop has screwed her. In reality, Bishop just
yeah, the
had to
platform
fly
was
away.
just becoming unstable. He couldn't stay there.
Yeah. So Bishop picks him up. They fly away.
Right, because that's another great moment, you know, where it's just like, close your eyes, baby. Because there's nothing they could do. They thought they were screwed. Here comes the alien queen.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, dun dun dun, here comes the ship. And I think a lot of viewers nowadays, if you haven't seen Aliens and you watch it, I think you have to keep in mind that you've seen a lot of these tropes nowadays in other movies. But I would say in 1986, a lot of these things were probably new and maybe original to this film, you know? So knowing that the ship would pop up behind her at the last moment is something we all know nowadays. But I don't know if you knew it back in 86. You very well could have. But I think that it was probably a great surprise. Like, oh my God, he's here, you know?
That was a Star Wars thing, wasn't it?
Well, sort of.
Well, no, wasn't there a scene where Luke was back, or was that in the prequels?
I think it was in the prequels is what you're talking about. But the only thing I can think of close is when he's hanging on the bottom of Cloud City. And they go pick him up. But you're along with both him and the Millennium Falcon. If the Millennium Falcon had just appeared below him as a surprise, that would have been the equivalent.
There's absolutely a scene where he backs up, he's on a ledge, he sees the ship below him, he jumps off, and then he rises back up and you see him re-enter the frame on top of the ship.
You are talking about Back to the Future 2, where Marty is going to get shot by Biff on the top of Biff Tower.
No, that I
And he jumps off And Biff is just like, oh, this idiot just killed himself. And then he rises on top of the DeLorean.
Well, okay, that's
That's what you're
another
talking
place where it
about.
happens. But I was thinking of a different one. Um,
This did not happen in any original Star Wars movie that I can think of.
I know it for sure happens with Rey in the last one. Well, she doesn't rise up.
Yes.
But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway,
Anyway,
go
my
back on
point
the
was,
ship.
I don't know if it was a trope in '86. I think it may have been pretty unique to this movie, or at least around that time period.
Yeah, like I think we get a lot of everything we expect from the 70s and 80s, and that's a good thing.
Right.
Uh,
And from what I read, I think a lot of people wanted to end it here, right? Like this would be the
it would be
ending,
a great ending.
or is that the Alien film? I think that was the Alien film.
The Alien
right? Is
film
where they just
too
wanted to end
was
it with
an
her getting on
add-on.
the shuttle.
Yeah, but they do the same thing here, which is a little uncreative. Thank you, James Cameron.
Well, this is the part that he understands he's in a franchise. And so part of being in a franchise and also doing a successful sequel and bringing the original fans along to the new ones and making new fans out of your new film is also following, not copying, but following some sort of blueprint for the first film.
So you have to blow
And
it out.
since
an
there's
airlock?
there's that add-on scene, or there's that add-on ending to the first film, I think they were totally like, we need an add-on to this film as well. But if it's badass, then that's fine. People will forgive it, from knowing it's an add-on or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, they get back to the main ship, and they all go to bed, and everything ends happily ever after. The end. And that was Aliens, the 1986. Oh wait,
Are you just skipping ahead?
no. So they get off the ship, and they're literally just
Right.
in the hangar bay. And Bishop's
Right.
talking, and he's all happy that he did a good job because
He's
Sigourney.
like, I did good.
Yeah,
She's like, you did good, little Bishop.
and then the queen.
And then all of a sudden, ah, God, it goes in, everything slows down, and there's milk everywhere.
Yep, and Bishop has just been torn in half by the queen that
With
hitched a
the
ride.
tail.
Yeah, with her big
Yeah.
tail.
So the queen hitched a ride on the landing gear, which coincidentally he had some trouble getting back into the ship.
Right, which was
after,
awesome.
leaving.
Like,
Yeah.
those good shots.
So yeah, Nuke goes and hides, and Ripley's like, "Oh, okay, cool. It's just mano a mano. I got to take on this alien creature. How am I going to do this?" So here comes the front loaders. I don't know what else to call them other than that. The body
Mech loaders.
exoskeleton front loaders.
Yeah. Callback from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, total foreshadowing. Here we go. At least when they foreshadow things, they use them later on, or they make good on that wish. You know what I mean? Oh, I hope she fights somebody in that, you said to yourself an hour and a half earlier. And you're like, nice. Here it comes. Excellent. I think that's the most iconic scene.
Yeah.
Is when that opens up and she says,
Get away from her, you. You what? Is it just get away from her, you bitch?
"Get away from her, you bitch."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how she says
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's an amazing line.
Yeah. Because
Uh,
Sigourney Weaver is
maybe
perfect.
one of the top 10 in film history. You know what I mean? Like, it's that iconic.
Yeah, I had forgotten about it until I rewatched this, so I don't know.
That's weird, but here you go. So they have a knockdown drag out. I mean, what better way to have a fight with an alien than actually fighting with the alien, which is something they hadn't really been able to do.
It's funny, yeah. She throws fists, and
Yeah.
they just happen to be big steel claw fists.
Right.
And she gets smart.
And she knows what worked before, so it's like, hey, let's try the airlock thing again.
Yep. So she opens up an airlock. She throws the alien into the hole, but oh, what does he do? Or she do?
Grabs on.
Grabs
She do.
on. And Ripley falls in, and she climbs up a ladder because airlocks are going to have ladders, and she triggers the airlock. The alien goes flying off into space eventually. And the happy ending. She was really good at putting aliens in space. Now,
Yeah. Now, why do you think this movie works as a sequel? Let's wrap this up.
yeah, let's wrap this up. This should be exactly what everybody looks for when they're trying to make a sequel. It's
Yeah.
taking the universe and building on top of it without necessarily rehashing many elements of the first movie. Like, and that's what Cameron did beautifully is he expanded this world for us, and we see it, and we see the characters better than when we started. I don't, I
Yeah.
don't know.
And I also think if you're going to make a sequel, you need to. This is what you need to do. You need to add on to the story of the original with a worthy successor with an eye toward ending the story. I think that's why Aliens works, is because I'd argue James Cameron added to Ripley's story and ended it appropriately. That was his goal.
Yeah, like
Like, yes, Alien happened, and that's her story, and that could be her end. But if we take her in this direction, this gives her more to do. This is a completely worthy second installment to the first film, and we can give her a really final ending, which is completely um, necessary, I guess, or worthwhile, or whatever you want to say. But like that's the eye toward a sequel, is that I came up with another story for her, and I can end it really awesome as well. So they're like, yeah, go ahead and do that. And I think that's why it works, is because it is those two movies a perfect ending
that's a
to the Alien films.
that's a really good point, and I like that. Like, there's so many sequels that we're gonna cover where there's to be continued, or there's cliffhangers, or there's things where it's like an
Yes.
obvious draw. Like if we do any horror sequel, there's almost always an obvious draw. Like, oh, there could be the next movie.
Yeah, and that's why a sequel is in itself not really often a failure, is because they want more out of it than they should. They're like, well, we might have one after this, so let's not completely end it. You know what I mean? And then you're just like, well, why are we doing it then? Like, you need an ending. Now it's out of his hands if they want to try to come up with an Alien 3, but as far as he was concerned, this is the end. And that's what James Cameron has done well twice. He did it again with Terminator. You know, he gave Terminator 2, he was like, I got another story idea for Terminator. It's going to take it in a new world. It's going to take it, it's going to build on that world. It's going to make it more exciting, and we're going to end it officially at the end of Terminator 2. There's no need for any more.
Hey,
And then it's out of his hands if they want to do more, but
just remember that
that's the way
was,
he approached it.
you know, heavily involved in that new Terminator, and you could tell.
Yes, he was, but they bring him into. He was also brought out during the press junket for Genesis as well.
Was he?
Talking about how talking about how amazing that film was, and that was how that was a worthy successor to the Terminator franchise.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't think he had much to do with it, but they brought him out. They convinced him to come out and promote it.
Like
That's why I don't give a shit about the Terminator movies after Terminator 2, is because he's kind of full of shit when he talks about how good they are too. Because he says this new one was amazing and everything.
like
The
I think
same way he
was
did about Genesis.
so involved in this one that he was pissing off the director. Which one did this one? Was it Shane Black?
No, it was no, Deadpool.
Deadpool.
Tim Miller. That's
That's
who directed
all
it.
right.
He did Deadpool. Yes.
Yeah, he was saying
I don't
that-
know. It seemed from everything I read from what Miller was saying, he really enjoyed working with Cameron.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that after it came out, I think it was some shades of gray that he was throwing his way,
Possibly.
and that
Anyway, that's my take on a sequel, is that everybody, you should see a great movie and go like, this doesn't really need another movie. But if you want to do one, it better be different, but yet the same, you know? And then it better have an ending. That's how I think you make a successful sequel.
yeah, a movie with an ending. I like that a lot.
Now, what they try to do with Alien 3 is like, no, we have another ending for her. And that's where you get into the trouble area.
Yeah, and that's where this franchise really
Same thing with Terminator 3.
starts grinding at the wood down.
But I think what they also hope is that when you have a franchise is that, okay, the first two movies are pretty classic. We're going to kind of reboot in a way with this next sequel. And that'll start a new franchise off. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's what they were kind of hoping with Terminator 3, for instance, is that would have started a new franchise where it's more about John now. Because, like, Sarah's story is ended, so now this one's about John, but that also didn't work.
And we'll talk about it more next week, but yeah, the producers who are still at it for all these movies have actually approached Sigourney Weaver with a spec script to continue on the story of Ripley.
Yeah, and this thing gets crazy, that story.
I can't even begin. But yeah, Weaver was like, yeah, I'm not really there.
It doesn't sound good, though.
Like,
you know, like,
I haven't...
it sounded interesting to see it, but I just don't think it sounded good at all.
I haven't heard, like, details of the pitch. I just heard that they approached her.
Yeah. So you should read up on it. It's pretty interesting. But, yeah, so Aliens ends with Sigourney Weaver and Hicks and Newt, all in cryo hypersleep, whatever you want to call it. And Bishop, yep.
He's just in
although he's kind of torn apart, but he's an android, so he's okay.
Yeah. But why does he need to be in cryosleep?
So they're hiding. Yeah, I don't know. So they're heading toward Earth, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the idea? Yeah.
And yeah, it just
there you go.
Freezes on their face of Newt and Sigourney Weaver's faces in cryosleep, and then they start.
It freezes. They're frozen, but then it just dissolves. Yep, and I went through the credits, and there was no cutscene showing some surprise revelation. Yeah, right. There's really no reason for anything. Like, it's done. The story is done.
Yes. Until next week when we cover Alien 3. And,
yes. So next week we will cover Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, a double feature.
Yes.
I think we can fit both movies in one podcast. I think that would be a smart...
I think we can. I think we'll spend more time on Alien 3 than we will Resurrection, even though I love me some Winona Ryder.
I submit that Resurrection's a better film than 3, but only because it's more fun. It may be dumber, though.
It's
but
definitely dumber. But that's a good note to end on. This is Justin.
This is Aaron. Thank you for tuning in to Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels.
Be sure to
check out next week.
Oh, yeah. Check us out next week. But also, we could use some reviews on iTunes, one of the only places where you can review a podcast. And follow us on social media. It's out there.
Oh, I was going to put this on a CD and just hand it out to friends. Do we not do that anymore?
We can. I just don't want to give it to our friends. I'd rather total strangers listen to us.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.